If you're like most of us, you've probably wondered how celebrities achieve those incredible physical transformations for a movie or TV show. You see them looking fit or sometimes totally ripped like Chris Hemsworth prepping as Thor for the next Marvel movie and think, what is their secret? But it's not just for the stars. In today's episode, we are chatting with one of the fittest people on the planet and the trainer behind the scenes to big celebrities like Steve Harvey and Morris Chestnut. You are going to learn practical, totally doable strategies that can help anyone, celebrity or not, achieve the body of their dreams. Whether you're aiming for quick but controlled results or sustainable long-term health, this episode will tell you exactly what it takes to get there. Welcome to Wits and Weights, the show that helps you engineer your best physique for maximum results with minimum wasted effort. I'm your host, Philip, and today I invited on Obadike, a fitness industry icon, a Telly Award-winning TV host, and a best-selling author. He's written over 100 articles for top fitness magazines and websites, and his book, The Cut, co-authored with actor Morris Chestnut, has helped countless people transform their bodies and their lives. Obi's been featured on major national talk shows like The Today Show, and his expertise has earned him recognition as one of the most influential fitness experts. Today, you'll learn about Obi's approach to achieving rapid and sustainable fat loss, the strategies he uses with both celebrities and everyday clients, and how you can apply these methods to your own fitness journey. Plus, stick around to find out, is there a perfect diet for you? Obi, welcome to the show, my man.
Hey, Philip, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
So, man, I just want to jump right in and have you imagine that moment when a celebrity client, right, who's desperate to make a change and they have this very tight deadline before a major film or TV shoot, they walk into your gym and they look in the eye and they say, this role could change my life, but I'm nowhere ready for it, right? How do you create a training and nutrition plan under such pressure and know without a doubt that it will succeed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think unfortunately, sometimes when you have to get a celebrity ready for a big project, most of the time they never really give you enough time. And you feel the extra stress and anxiety, especially if they say, hey, we need to look like this in 8 weeks or 9 weeks. You're like, that's not enough time, So I've never ever felt that I've been given enough time to help somebody get ready for a big project. And so what happens is that you feel the extra stress, you feel the extra anxiety, and they always end up having to overtraining the client because you're, doing so much,
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because if you have a deadline, we always talk about when you're setting up your fat loss phase, for example, don't necessarily have a date in mind and try to go aggressively toward a date. Come up with a reasonable approach that'll get you there and then get the results that come. But some people have a wedding, they have a photo shoot. Your clients have a date that they're going after. And it sounds like it leads to some level of trade-off or extreme that maybe is not quote unquote healthy in the short term, but it gets you to the result. I mean, would you agree with that? And if so, the everyday person listening, we're going to get into like the pros and cons of that, but what are your thoughts on that approach for the everyday person?
Yeah, for the everyday person, I'm not an advocate of doing anything extreme. So it's really contradictory to my beliefs when I'm trying to transform someone. When I have an everyday average person that wants to get in shape, wants to lose weight, it's very important for me to get as much information from them as possible. I call it a health screening questionnaire. Get their height, their weight, their fitness goals, their dietary preferences, foods they like to eat, foods they don't like to eat, past or present injuries, medical concerns I need to be aware of. So I want to get all of that detailed information from them, which allows me to create a tailored program for them. And then I really try to give it an honest time frame on how long it would take for them to lose the weight. Because a lot of times when you have to help someone get in shape within a short amount of time, the program is extreme, particularly if the time frame is limited. And so when you have an extreme program, exercise or diet, typically people can't maintain that because the extremity is just too much, particularly when you're having someone work twice a day or somebody that has to is on some, extremely low caloric diet. So those type of training and diet program is too much. So again, I'm not an advocate of that. And the everyday average person is really what, to be honest with you, I enjoy working with because I don't feel the stress and anxiety to have to get someone to look a certain way within such an extreme short amount of time.
Yeah, I feel you on that. and love the fact that you gather all that information, right? Because I get questions all the time. What is your answer for X? And it's like, it depends. Answer my questions first because I need to understand you as an individual. And I want the listener to understand that, when you see somebody up on a screen or whatever, it's like a bodybuilding competition. There's a above and beyond. It's almost like a performance related goal that at all costs in some cases, right? So you mentioned, 2-a-days and very low calories and things like that. So maybe tell us about a specific like transformation you went through with a celebrity so we can understand what some of those trade-offs are. And then we can kind of pivot into
Sure.
the everyday client. Yeah.
Well, when I got Morris Chestnut in shape for the Best Man holiday, this might have been about 11 years ago. I was given a time frame of literally I think 10, 11 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And people don't believe this, but he came to me overweight. So he had to really drop about 30 to 33 pounds to get in shape for the movie. So because we were so limited in time frame, I had to do 2-a-day workouts with him where we were, he was doing 2-a-day cardio days. And then he was obviously lifting weights in the morning time. And then I probably had him starting off at his daily calories was probably, he was 220. I got him down to 187. And I think the daily calories that I had him at the start was maybe about 1900. And then every couple of weeks, we would drop it down to 100. And I think that he probably at the lowest might have been at 1600 calories because I was really trying to strip all that body fat from his body. And I wanted to make sure he was in an extreme deficit. And so that is not how I would never have anyone do 2-a-day workouts. That's like if you're training for the Olympics or something, but when you're limited in the limited time frame, that's unfortunately you have to do that. So he was on a low caloric diet and then he was overtraining. He was burning a lot of calories daily. And I think we might have been doing this about 5 days a week. So they had given me 4 months or 5 months. Then the program might have been maybe 4 days a week and would be, 4 days a week of weights and 4 days a week of cardio. And maybe the daily calories would have been slightly higher and it wouldn't be so low. Whereas if where I've had other clients where maybe some guy came to me and he weighed 240 pounds and he wanted to lose 30 or 40 pounds, on an average, start him off at maybe 2,100, 2,000 calories, maybe drop him down to 1,800, 1,700, have him working out 4 to 5 days a week. Probably cardio wouldn't be more than maybe 30, 40 minutes at a time. So it'd really be a slow, incremental process, the whole 1 to 2 pounds per week, healthy weight loss type of thing, as opposed to someone that has to get in shape for a big movie and he's got a limited amount of time frame and he's dropping 4 pounds or 5 pounds a week, which is not really healthy. It's double what is suggested by the CDC and what is really suggested by a lot of health and wellness professionals, which is that 1 to 2 pounds per week.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes we talk in percentages too, 1% a week above which you might lose muscle mass. And we're hearing a lot of, the rapid muscle loss with the Ozempic and those kinds of drugs and everything as well because of the rapid weight loss. So what you're saying is, if you got 10 weeks, 3 or 4 or 5 pounds a week, you're talking 1,500, 2,000 calorie deficit-ish, something like that, which you're kind of making the calories not drop as low as they could drop by adding some cardio and movement on top of that. How do you monitor in that situation the body composition to get where you want? Because I imagine for someone going into a role like that, it could literally just be get as shredded as possible, regardless of muscle loss, and that's the trade-off. Or it could be, no, we need to maintain some of that because of their starting composition. Yeah.
I'd had Morris weigh himself every week when I was working with him. And then I would have him, we would do body fat composition tests maybe once every 3 weeks, once every month, And the weight loss, obviously, as we know, the first 2 weeks of any weight loss program, more than half of it is always going to be water loss anyway, not body fat loss. And body fat, I'm not really an advocate of checking body fat every week. It takes a while to really see the incremental drop. So I always like to do, if I'm going to do a body composition test, a body fat test and check the body fat, I think once a month is enough time to see the incremental drop. So that's kind of what we were doing. And so what was fascinating, and then I also actually had him lift heavy weights because he was, and that I increased his protein because he was in an extreme deficit and he wasn't getting as many calories, what was going to help with trying to minimize the muscle loss was the increase in his protein intake and then lifting heavier, because we don't want him looking stringy. You know what I mean? We don't want him looking flat. He's supposed to be a professional football player in the movie. And the reason why it was so important to get him to single digit body fat was that it's so funny. He's got a huge female following, that wants to see that shirtless scene, that little V around that was the money shot. You know what I mean? It's so funny. You train your butt off intensely for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 weeks for one shirtless scene, in a movie, which is so funny, but that was it. So what was really cool about it was that at the time, I think he was like 43 or 44 at the time. So that was the best shape he had ever been in his entire life. And so because before social media exploded, it was all about fitness magazines. If you were a fitness professional and you weren't in a magazine before social media exploded, you didn't exist. So at that time, magazines were still relevant. And so I had those relationships with all the fitness magazines. So I was able to get him on a fitness magazine cover at the time that the movie came out to capture this new transformed physique. So that was really, really cool that I was able to use my relationships. And surprisingly, even though he's been on magazine covers, he had never really been on a fitness magazine cover, believe it or not. So that was kind of really cool to be able to capture this, transformed physique. And so when he was promoting the movie, they were showing that magazine cover, it was really, really cool. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you make some good points there, right? Like some of this is a snapshot in time, right? When people are scrolling through Instagram and seeing all these great looking physiques, it's like, that's a snapshot, right? That's probably at their best, at their leanest. I've heard you mention, even just to have six pack revealed, you've got to be sub like 14% body fat or in that range.
If you're a guy, yeah. He was probably at the time, just going off of my head, don't quote me on it, but he was 220. He might have been probably in the, body fat was probably in the 20s, maybe 23, 24% there. He wasn't, he was definitely in the worst shape. So we took him down from that 20s down to probably about maybe, it was probably about 8%, 7 to 8%, something around there.
Was he already a lifter before then? Like had he already built some muscle?
Yeah, he was a fitness guy. He definitely wasn't like someone that was like, he definitely worked out, how do I put this? I wouldn't say like super, super fitness guy, but definitely was fitness minded. It more like he liked doing athletic things, playing basketball, as opposed to someone who was in the gym lifting weights every day. So he was definitely a physically active person. And for the most part, most movies that he'd ever been in where he did take his shirt off, it was never a problem. But I think at this time, he's in his 40s at the time, and he was in New York where it was really, really cold prior to the movie getting greenlit. And he kind of was just staying in his apartment, wasn't working out for months, and, had no desire and motivation. And then all of a sudden he gets a call that this movie's got greenlit, and the director's like, hey, we need you to look like this. And he's like, oh, snap. Okay, I'm nowhere near that right now. How much time we got, And so that's when he contacted me, and that started the working relationship and friendship as well, too.
Cool, man. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, a lot of people can relate to just that time in their life. They're kind of letting things go for whatever reason, and now they need the kick in the butt to get back to it. And what better way than a big role?
Yeah, it happens with everyone. Happens with everyone. We're all human beings, and sometimes whether it's stress, whether it's grief, whether it's depression, so many different variables that can affect your motivation to want to exercise or do anything. We all go through that, but some people are able to really always use exercise as a form of as an outlet, as therapeutic. So yeah.
All right. Now, so talking about the everyday person, I do want to quickly segue to like your rapid fat loss or rapid weight loss for that population where it's sustainable and safe. And I kind of want the listener to understand that, because yes, there's the reasonable longer term approach that we probably should be taking. But then there's, okay, maybe I have been lifting. Maybe my nutrition is dialed in. I know how to hit the protein that OB is asking me to hit. Is there some sort of protocol or approach that you would take with a client like that?
Sure. Well, I really believe in balance. I'm really believing in balance. So I'm not a believer in extreme macronutrients where your carbs are extremely low, or I really believe a great starting template macronutrient ratio wise is 40-40-20, which is 40% protein, 40% carbs, 20% fats, and then start to make your maneuvers from that starting point. So I feel like if you eat in a balanced way, I feel like you're going to optimize your energy levels when you're trying to drop body fat and trying to drop weight. I don't feel like the should be where you're lowering your macronutrient ratio because you believe you're going to drop more body fat. Like, let's just say, for example, you're dropping your carbs down to 5% carbs, maybe a keto aspect. I mean, not everyone can do that. Now your energy levels are so low and the process is very difficult for you because you're probably not affecting your mental ability to stay alert. You don't have the energy levels to be able to function, especially if you work a job that requires you to work long hours and stuff like that. So, all the research shows that, yes, if you're on a low carb diet, will you drop body fat? Will you drop weight? Yeah, you drop weight the first, week or 2 weeks, but it's water because of the glycogen once you drop your carbohydrate levels and stuff like that. But all the research has shown that you're not going to drop any more body fat if carbs are 5 to 10% of your diet's coming from carbs, as opposed to your carbs being higher. You drop body fat because you're in a deficit. Okay. So when, I always say that when the Whole30 diet, the keto diet, the Mediterranean diet, all of these different diets, why are people losing weight? What's so unique? What's so different? If they're losing weight because they're in a deficit, full stop. That's it. So once you understand how it works, then you're like, okay, well, then I don't need to go that razor low on my carbs or my fats, or I could still have it where I'm getting enough where I feel like my energy levels are optimal and I could still work out with high energy. I could still play with my kids, be with my spouse. I could still work long hours and my energy levels are going to be optimal because my macronutrients are balanced. So that's my approach in being able to get the optimal result. I don't believe that we have to go really razor on the macronutrient ratios and deplete you to get you to the goal, and you're absolutely miserable every week. I don't think it should be an unpleasant experience, and then also you have to also look at it from a long-term perspective, like, okay, you're getting the person to that final goal, right? And, but you're trying to create a program that they can continue after they stop working with you. So, okay, I got you to the goal in a miserable way, in a way that every week you have no energy whatsoever. And now this person wants to maintain this body. He's like, oh my God, I have to stay at this level. I have to stay at this, 30 grams of carbs per day. I don't know if I could do that. I got there, I love my body, but that was tough. That was miserable. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, I see what you're saying, man. We are 100% aligned. I'm glad you're on the show telling people carbs are important and balance is important, because you're totally right, man. The most hate I got on a podcast episode was called More Carbs, More Muscle. And it's like the keto and the low carb zealots come out like, again, we talked before we even started recording, like people cherry picking science or trying to, the thing that they're trying to sell, saying that this is optimal just because they're trying to make money off of it. And like you said, recovery, energy, balance, sustainability, all of the boxes are checked when you're just in a reasonably balanced diet. Most people, the protein's too low or the carbs are too low.
And this is my thing. As long as you understand what you're doing, if you're on a keto diet and it's helping you lose body fat and weight, God bless you. And if you're okay with that, that's cool. But what I'm trying to say and what you're trying to say is that, hey, this is what you're not losing body fat because you're on a keto. You're losing it because you're in a deficit. The science and the data shows that your macronutrient, when someone is dropping body fat, it's not because of the macronutrient ratio being dropped, or it has everything to do with your macronutrient ratio. It's because you're in a deficit. It has nothing to do with, dropping a certain nutrient level down to a minimal level. And that's why you're dropping body fat. And that's the science says that. So I think it's just understanding what you're doing, and then you can make the decision on which path works for you. And that's what I believe in, is just providing the information and, pick a program, what works for you. But I'm going to be honest and say, hey, this may not be sustainable for you, and then you have to make that decision what you want to do.
Yes, that's a good segue into the question, like, what is the perfect diet? Because you've already alluded to the fact that these named diets are not necessarily the way to go, that it's got to work for you. It's got to be customized. What are those big factors besides macro balance, which is super important, and it can shift, right? It can shift. Somebody might do better on higher protein or lower carbs or whatever. What are kind of the boxes you would check for the perfect diet for an individual?
Well, I think the perfect diet is, as I was saying, the perfect diet is a diet that's balanced, that you're getting your proteins, your carbs, your healthy fats, complex carbs, your fruits and vegetables with every meal, your protein with every meal, your complex carbs with every meal. So I believe in the whole fruit rainbow effect, where you make sure you have your greens and your fruits and your vegetables with every single meal. You have your protein with each meal, especially if you're an advocate of wanting to maintain your lean muscle mass. As you know, as you get older, every decade after the age of 30, you can drop anywhere from 2 to 4% of lean muscle mass. The only way to combat that muscle mass decline is lifestyle change. So protein, as you know, and resistance training, they work hand in hand. So making sure your protein is, you're consuming that with every meal. I do believe in at least a gram of protein per pound. Having your complex carbs in your breakfast, lunch and your dinner, having your fruits and vegetables with each meal. So I just really believe in the balance approach. Obviously, if you're an athlete and your activity level requires an extreme amount of physical activity level, then your carbohydrate intake is going to be probably double or triple the average person, because you're feeding off of that fuel to be able to sustain the activity level. So a lot of times your macronutrient ratio is really is physical activity dependent. So this is not, when I'm saying balanced in your ratio, I'm talking about the everyday average person walking on the street. I'm not talking about a professional athlete. That's a completely different ball game, in terms of what your ratio is. Because if you're talking about an athlete, that carbohydrate's going to go really, really, really high,
Yeah, man, it's funny. I had a guy on the show, you'd love him. His name is Ben Lewis. Went through a massive transformation, 280. He lost 100 pounds. He gets 60 miles a week of running. He qualified for the Boston Marathon, but he also lifts 3 days a week and has retained his muscle. It's amazing, but 4,700 calories. You know what I mean? So a lot of that is going to be carbs.
Wow, exactly. It's how many miles a week does he run?
60 miles a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah,
I wonder
yeah.
how old is he?
He's 55.
I'd love to know how his joints are, man, how his knees and his hips look.
That's what I'm saying. I think you'd love him. We can touch base later on because his episode is out before this one. Yeah. Okay. So, everything you're saying is, I'm sure the listeners like, okay, cool. I got it. Like the gram per pound of protein and having balance and having fiber and complex carbs and all that. What about the 80-20 approach a lot of us talk about, where from a sustainability perspective, you got to have some indulgences in there? Yeah.
Sure. I'm a big advocate of that for sure. 80-20. And sometimes some people need that 70-30, like me sometimes. So I feel like if you can, we all need it from a psychological perspective as well, too, to ask someone to eat a certain way so strict 7 days a week. I just don't think that's realistic. So you can still accomplish your goals with the 80-20 rule, 90-10 rule, and even push it to 70-30 if you're exercising enough physical activity level that would give you that extra buffer to bring you from 80-20 to 70-30. So I am a huge advocate of that. I think that, as they say, indulging within moderation. And there's a word that people don't use in fitness called extreme moderation. And so moderation in how you eat and how you exercise. A lot of people don't understand when you exercise, it's a two-pronged effect. The first prong is you're working out and you're tearing down your muscle. So that's important, right? And then you're resting and recovering. And while you're recovering, it's rebuilding. So the rest is just as important as you're tearing it down. And people don't understand that. They think it's tear, 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 tear. When is it recovering? When is it rebuilding after you've torn it down? It's a two-step process. I know people that have overtrained. Like, God, I'm always sore. And I'm not improving my strengths. And they take a couple weeks off from the gym and all of a sudden their strength levels jumped up. You know what I mean? Their lifts are up. Well, you've been overtraining. Your body hasn't, you're not giving your body enough time to recover. It took me years to figure that out. When you're young, you think you're supposed to live in the gym 7 days a week. And you get older, you realize, man, no, the rest is just as important as working out.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. That like stimulus to fatigue, and that fatigue builds up. And the older we are, I hear you. I didn't really get into this properly until my late 30s. So it started to affect me, not being as young of a guy anymore. And most of the people we talk to on the show are in their 40s and 50s. So that's actually a good transition to, how important is that recovery and how much more important does it get as we age? You mentioned joints, right? With the runner I was talking about, joint health, connective tissue, all that. Like, what are the specific challenges individuals in that age group should really be thinking about? How do they recover and prioritize that?
Sure. Well, I think that when you're talking about someone in their, 40s and their 50s and stuff like that, I feel like the older you get, the more your rest and recovery is important. Your body, the thing when you get older is that the difference between someone who's in their 40s or their 50s or older than that, between someone who's younger, is the recovery aspect, where you don't recover as fast. That's the problem when you get older. It's not the fact that you can't lift as heavy as you did when you were younger, but the recovery aspect is the issue when you get older. That's why when you see an older athlete, the reason why they may not have the best performances, back-to-back performances, they have back-to-back games, the recovery. They don't recover as fast as someone who's younger. So you have to understand, as the older you get, you have to give yourself maybe even more recovery time. The idea of you working out 7 days a week, I've never been an advocate of that, but 6 days a week, you'll probably find out you'll be able to have better performances in the gym or even better body composition maintenance if you're training less as opposed to more, particularly if your objective is just to maintain your shape. You don't have any, like, you're not a marathon runner or you're not competing in something or whatever. Maybe you just want to just stay in shape for your age, and maintain your muscle mass. You don't have to be in there 6 days a week.
Hi, my name is Alan, and I just want to give a shout out to Philip Pape of Wits and Weights for being a huge part of the foundation for my continued health and well-being. Philip exemplifies a nutrition coach who demonstrates how much he cares. Philip works tirelessly and with dedication to provide coaching support and major content for us to use. He creates a practical approach from research, and Philip empowers all of us to use food as quality for our health. He is skilled in how to assess and direct nutrition. Philip creates a community full of wisdom, support, and camaraderie. In summary, Philip Pape is the real deal. He knows how to assess and direct nutrition, and he continues to steer me in the right direction. Thank you, Philip.
So what are your thoughts then on, because you mentioned the frequency, and I have a lot of discussions about this with trainers and lifters. What if a 3-day-a-week program that has a certain amount of volume got split into 6 days, the same amount of total volume? In other words, you're spreading out the fatigue. Have you seen that actually be a beneficial input, change for recovery? You know what I'm saying? So it's more days, but the same amount of volume just spread over 6 days instead of 3.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't have an issue with that whatsoever, because if you're spreading it out over 6 days, right? But every day is probably a lower workout output. It's really not, maybe it's 30 minutes a day or whatever. It's not that much, so you're not taxing the body at the highest level every day. So your body is given enough time to recover because you're not taxing it to the point where you might need a day or 2 days to recover. So I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. I feel like, and everybody's different, I feel like the mental, psychological approach of like just being able to have a couple of days from going to the gym and exercising, sometimes it's really good just to have that psychological break, as opposed to, I know people that just love the gym and they can't stay away from it. But sometimes just having that mental, psychological break from being in the gym, at least 2 days at least 2 days, I think can actually help you. I know for me personally, I used to train like this back in the day, 6 days a week. And But I feel like me personally, I feel like I enjoy it more when I'm away from the gym at least a couple days a week. And then when I go back in there, I enjoy it even more, as opposed to being in there 6 days a week. There's not only the physical approach to the physical recovery aspect, there's also the psychological aspect as well, too, I think at times.
Yeah, I asked because, personally, I've experimented with both, and we talk about it on the show too. Because, like you said, the archetype of the person who always has to go to the gym every day, do we scratch that itch by going to the gym every day? Or do we actually assess that maybe we're doing too much by going to the gym every day and using those off days? And also, I found one benefit of it is I'm a morning gym goer. Those extra recovery days just means I can get that extra hour of sleep. That can be huge, for people just to sleep,
Yeah. And the thing about it is just the most important thing is just to listen to your body, because the human body is amazing. It'll tell you when you've done too much. It'll tell you when you need a break if you're so sore. And I think it's so important to listen to it. And a lot of people don't, so when you're able to listen to your body, it'll tell you, hey, I probably may need to take a day off today. I'm tired.
I know, man. Yeah. Recovery and sleep are not sexy topics. As much as we hammer home how important they are, you know what I mean? People always want to talk about the on switch rather than the off switch. Yeah.
I personally think if people can incorporate recovery and sleep and really incorporate that as part of fitness, okay, it's like, okay, exercise is part of fitness, but no one ever really talks about sleep and recovery as part of fitness. It is. It's really connected. If you truly want to optimize your goals, optimize your gains, it is part of that. And please stop watching some of these, juiced up, roided bodybuilders tell you got to be in there 7 days a week, 3 hours a day. Well, they're taking drugs, man. Yeah, of course. If I'm taking all that stuff, I probably could work out like that too.
I hear you, man. No, I didn't know if you were going to get into the PEDs too, because I know people have questions about that. But it's funny you say that because I know if somebody asks, hey, I missed some reps, what's going on? Should I lower the weight? One of the first questions I asked is, did you get enough sleep? Like, did you get enough rest? Are you taking a long enough rest period? It's like the absence of the stuff is usually supporting the stuff. And so
right.
it's part of your fitness. Yeah, it's a good one. What about lifting heavy? Because you mentioned lifting heavy, and that's kind of I use that term all the time, and people are like, what do you mean? For older folks, especially, I am a big advocate of lifting heavy, no matter your age. I don't care if you're 90. Like, I think it's great. It's great for your skeletal muscular system. But what do we mean by that? And how does that come into play with connective tissue and joints and things like that?
Right. Well, I think as the older you get, when you get older, I feel like if you're lifting really heavy, I feel like over time, it's not really good for your joints, especially when you're in your 50s. I still think you can push the muscle without going super heavy like a power lifter. I'm not really an advocate of doing a set less than 10 reps. I just don't really see the value of that unless you're trying to be a power lifter. And the older you get, once you start lifting really heavy, you can feel in your joints. You're going to feel in your knees. You're going to feel in your elbows. You're going to feel in your hips. So I know that there's a high out of lifting heavy, being strong. But, if your goal is to maintain muscle or even build it, whether it's building or maintaining it, the muscle doesn't know that you're lifting 150 pounds. All it knows is the tension you've applied to it. It doesn't say, wait a minute, I'm lifting 120 pounds now. Now it's time for me to build. Now it's time for me to grow. All it knows is the tension. So when you understand how the muscle adapts to the stress that you put on it, then you realize you don't have to lift heavy to maintain the muscle or even build it, because most of it is really associated with the calories that you're intaking, but then the stress you put to the muscle. You can still stress the muscle without going heavy. You can go higher repetitions, go slower. So once you understand that, then I think it makes sense. Okay, what's the better approach to longevity, to protecting my joints and not having issues where I'm always in pain. My joints are always in pain, because I'm lifting so heavy. We all eventually have to make those adjustments as we get older. I had to. I'm 48. I had to make those adjustments. I'm not going out there squatting 4 or 5 or whatever anymore back in the day. Who am I competing against? And then also, I don't want to have a knee replacement. I don't want to have joint issues and stuff like that. So I had to make those adjustments, So, yeah.
Yeah. And my thoughts on this have been nuanced and evolving over the years as well. it's kind of still mixed, right? Because I have a lot of friends and people listen to the show that are powerlifters, or they are in their 50s and 60s and get into lifting, and they, they do the fives, right? They do the triples, they do the doubles, and it can be managed, right? It's one of those things of like, you got to be really on top of everything. But even so, you do hear about tendonitis and you hear about joint issues and people pulling stuff and whatnot. Because if you're just out of the wrong position, in the wrong position on a very heavy load, something can happen. So it's kind of a nuanced thing. But yeah, I hear you.
I think as long as you're aware of the risk involved in it, that's the most important thing. I would never tell someone what not to do, but just understand if you're lifting really heavy and you're powerlifting, let's say you're in your 40s and your 50s, you're not going to be doing that in your 70s. You're not going to be like your body will tell you to make the adjustment. Your body's going to say, my elbow is killing me. My knees are killing me. I can't lift. I've seen it. You have to have seen a power lifter in their 70s or even their 60s, and if they have, like, God bless them. And if they are power lifters, they just started as a senior citizen. They weren't doing it for like 30 years or 40 years.
It's true. There is that. If you start late, you get that advantage.
I want to make the adjustment earlier and just understand, like, I don't want to be in pain, man, as I get older. You know what I mean? And I want to enjoy my life. And yeah, it's good. We all want to push ourselves in the gym, and I do it, but there's a number that I don't go higher than anymore. I don't, like, even when I do flat dumbbell chest press, back in the day, I'd go up to 120s, or I don't go more than 100 anymore, man. That's the max is 100. For me, it's just trying to maintain the muscle, and that's where I'm at. If you've been lifting for more than 10 years consistently, you're considered an experienced fitness enthusiast. And so once you've been lifting for more than 10 years consistently, the theory is that you've hit your genetic potential. You can't improve anymore. You're not going to get any more muscle. So when you know that, you're like, okay, even if I increase and go heavier and heavier, I can't improve anymore. Like we're all dealing with the gravity aspect as we get older. It's inevitable. Like I said, Father Time is undefeated. What are we doing? We're just slowing it down. We are slowing the decline down. That's what we're doing. Okay. We're trying to freeze that mofo without the fillers and the Botox. Excuse me.
No, I hear you, man. Look, I mean, I know a lot of lifters that go after the PRs, but then there comes a time when they have to switch up the mode, go into some more bodybuilding and some high rep stuff. And they might occasionally dip back into chasing the PRs. I mean, maybe there's a way. That's an extreme, like anything. It's like bodybuilding. It's like, Morris going through his transformation. It's like the short-term extreme at some cost of your health short-term, but it's like, we're humans. We want to do that. Sometimes we want to go after a goal.
It's just like someone in their 40s or 50s still playing rugby. When you're in your 20s and, when you're a young kid, you play tackle football in the rain with no pad. You didn't care, if you got injured. And then when you get older, you're like, oh man, I don't want to get injured. Are you kidding me? You just start making calculated decisions. You're like, I don't know if I want to go like, I don't know if I want to go crazy like that anymore. I got nothing to prove, But, look, anyone that could do that and they're able to stay healthy, God bless them. I'm not hate, like, wow, I'd be probably a fan. Like, I can't believe he's able to lift like that at that age. Wow.
Yeah, no, awesome. So I guess the last piece here, because you've alluded to it a few times, is maintenance of, maintaining long-term results. And I can think of a few different scenarios, not just longevity as we age, maintaining muscle, but like, for example, if you lean out, right, and you're really dialed in and you want to just, want to have a good physique, and maybe you're in your 30s or 40s, you're not like up there in your 70s yet. How do we maintain those results long term? Does it start with, like you said, having that balanced, ingrained in the whole process? Or is there some trade-off that has to be made once you say get to a certain leanness that, if you just had a little bit extra weight, it wouldn't be nearly as difficult to maintain that long term? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like you have to figure out what your set point is, and everyone will know exactly what, if you're doing regular body composition tests. There's a thing called the in-body scan that I've used with clients and stuff like that. And you do the body composition test, and it'll tell you exactly how many calories that you need to consume to maintain your body weight. Okay. And once you get an idea of that, then you'll know exactly, okay, this is the amount of calories that I can consume to maintain my body weight. And this is how I should probably spread out my calories, So I think it's important to find out exactly, how many calories is needed to be able to maintain your body weight. And you'll get that in a body composition exam, and I do the in-body scan, which I like. And I think that once you know that, then the amount of calories you're consuming to maintain your body weight, and then that to me is probably more crucial than anything in terms of your body composition. And then obviously making sure that, you're training enough consistently to be able to support the calories that you're consuming. So I think the amount of calories you're consuming that is needed to maintain your body weight is probably really important to be able to maintain your body composition. You know what I mean? So let's just say, for example, you do a body composition and it's saying that, hey, if you consume 2,200 calories a day, that's able to maintain your body composition presently right now, which is what you're happy with, right? Then okay, well, this is what I need. And I spread out my calories in a 40-40-20 way, or maybe a 40-30, figure out what that macro split is. So I feel like the calories that you're consuming needed to maintain your body weight is probably critical to maintaining your composition over a long-term period of time, and then making sure that the exercise activity is also mirroring that as well.
Yeah, I like that you brought it to just the simple, practical energy balance answer of like, to maintain, you got to be at maintenance calories. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because we get a lot of people expressing fear, for example, after a fat loss phase of, I'm going to regain all the weight or what have you. And assuming they've already been tracking and they kind of know their calories down to that point to have gotten there with that control, I like to say, like, just continue to track and continue to be aware. And the awareness is going to prevent you from just randomly over consuming. What about the mental side of it? Let's say a guy has gotten down to like 10 to 12%, right? Which is pretty lean. It's not like, the movie star lean, but it's also not like a lifestyle kind of where you start to lose your six pack. Okay. So 10 to 12%. Is that sustainable for a long period? Or is it really highly variable based on, the individual, their genetics and things like that?
Well, it depends on your genetics. We don't talk about genetics, So for example, for me, right, I'm a natural ectomorph. I'm a naturally thin person, right? Me maintaining a body fat of like 8%, 7% or 7 to 8% is easy for me. That's maintenance for me, right? But that's my genetics. And I have to be honest. I have the genetics, right? That helps me to maintain those low body fat levels, where someone else that may not have the genetics, that may not be a mesomorph or whatever, or someone that can maintain a high amount of muscle and stay and have low body fat levels, may not be able to do that. Like, they're coming down to 10 to 12%, but they're having to diet their butt off. They're having to eat perfectly. And then if they eat in a normal way without being in, and they were extreme to get to 10 to 12. And then when they eat normally, that 10 to 12 goes up to maybe their set point. Their set point may be probably about 15, 16, 17%. So why is that set point higher than mine? It's genetics. It sucks, man. This whole genetic lottery thing, it sucks, because some people are just gifted and they don't have to work. They don't have to probably eat like somebody else to maintain their set point. And that genetics is really going to dictate to how extreme you have to be to maintain a certain level of body fat, body composition that might be unreasonable for someone else, but reasonable for another person. That genetic lottery thing, it's a real thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's like, we have to acknowledge that and not let it defeat us. Have realistic expectations, right?
Have realistic expectations as far as, yeah.
My set point is probably 14%, or it's just much higher than yours. And, I was never in shape my whole life until I got older. So that could be part of it too. Genetics, epigenetics from when you're young.
It definitely could be, because I think once you get to a point where you get comfortable training and eating a certain way, just your body it becomes used to it. But if you're someone who started late in the game, it does take time for your body to get used to it. For me personally, I don't really eat. I eat when I'm hungry. I don't write down my calories, and I don't even, surprisingly, I don't eat that much. I'm not really a big breakfast eater. I kind of more in the morning time, I do more of an intermittent fasting thing. And then my biggest meals are lunch and dinner, and then snacks in between. but that works for me. People that have been around me say, this guy doesn't eat that much. How is he able to maintain that type of muscle? It's interesting,
It's very interesting. And I think if you do have a tendency to be on the heavier side or it's harder to get down to the body fat, maybe that's a good clue to like focus on building muscle, instead. And just kind of, because it does offset it a bit. I will say from personal experience, like you see your abs at a higher scale weight when you have more muscle. Like that's just the fact of it. You still have to get lean though, right? So it's kind of a blend. All right, man. So this has been a cool conversation. I do like to ask this question of all guests, Obi, and that is there anything you wish I had asked today that I didn't? And what is your answer?
No. Look, anytime I get opportunity to talk about health and fitness and diet and nutrition, it's always a blessing. And I hope that anybody listening was able to take some nuggets and apply it to their everyday life. So I appreciate the opportunity. And I just wanted to say, hey, I have a supplement company called ethicalinc.com. And if anyone's interested in purchasing any weight loss supplements like an appetite suppressant or a probiotic for gut health or even a multivitamin, go to ethicalinc.com. And if anyone's looking to want to get in better shape online, I work with everyday people and celebrities. You can go to obadike.com. And that's it. And I'm on social media. And if anyone's looking to, I'm always posting articles and free health and wellness articles, every other day to try to motivate and help people for free. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
What's the best social platform for you?
Instagram, I would say, but I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm active daily. So yeah.
Got it. Yep. Super responsive. All right. So ethicalinc.com, obadike.com, and Instagram, Facebook, Twitter handles. We'll throw those in the show notes. Thanks again, man. It's been a pleasure. A lot of great knowledge in here. I'm sure people will learn, at least a few things that are going to level up their game. So thanks so much.
Man, Philip, thanks a lot for having me on, and much success to you, and keep doing what you're doing, my brother.
Thank you, sir.